Welcome to Buddhist Balance, where we explore profound wisdom and insights that can guide us toward a more fulfilling, balanced life. Today, we're diving deep into a powerful Zen teaching that challenges everything you might think about the people who come into your life. What if I told you that the people who cross your path are not here by chance? That every person, whether they bring joy or challenge, has a purpose in your journey? Sounds intriguing, right? In this video, we'll uncover 7 Zen stories that explore how our relationships, both the easy and the difficult, are part of a bigger plan for our spiritual growth. From difficult encounters that test our patience, to unexpected meetings that change our lives, we'll see how every person has something valuable to teach us. So, if you're ready to unlock some powerful insights, grab a cup of tea, sit back, and let's dive in. Before we get started, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that like button if you find this video helpful. And make sure to subscribe to Buddhist Balance for more spiritual insights and life-changing wisdom. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Have you ever met someone who changed your life? We'd love to hear your story. Section 1: The Role of People in Our Lives. In Zen philosophy, there is a deeply rooted belief that people do not come into our lives by chance. They arrive when we need them most, bringing with them lessons that might not make sense at first, but will unfold over time. Life, as Zen teaches, is not a series of random events, but rather a collection of interconnected moments, each one serving as a stepping stone toward greater awareness, deeper understanding, and spiritual awakening. If we take a step back and reflect on our own experiences, we see that the people who have crossed our paths, whether briefly or for longer periods, have all left their mark. Some relationships, like fleeting breezes, come and go, but their impact is unmistakable. They change us, even if we never see them again. Other relationships, those that endure like the roots of an ancient tree, provide a sense of stability, wisdom, and support during the most challenging times in our lives. Take, for instance, the relationship between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Their partnership was not a mere coincidence. Each brought something unique to the table: Jobs' vision and Wozniak's technical expertise. Together, they founded Apple, a company that would go on to revolutionize the world. Their meeting and collaboration were not random events, but rather a part of a larger cosmic flow. If Jobs had not met Wozniak, would Apple have existed as we know it? Perhaps. But the timing, the chemistry, and the lessons each learned from the other were essential to the success they achieved. Zen master Hataka shares a beautiful metaphor in his teachings. He compares the way we live to the flight of birds in the sky. He says, "Look at the birds in the sky. They are not flying randomly. They are carried by the invisible currents of the wind. Just as you and I are carried by the invisible currents of life." This is not just a poetic image, it's a profound insight into how life unfolds. The birds don't control the wind, but they trust it to carry them to where they need to go. Similarly, we are carried by invisible forces, karma, fate, or perhaps divine guidance, that lead us to the people and experiences we need to grow. This teaching encourages us to embrace the idea that nothing is truly random. Each person who enters our life, whether for a season or a lifetime, has a purpose. Think about the way you met some of the most important people in your life. Often, these encounters seemed like coincidences at the time. But looking back, you can see how they were part of a larger, orchestrated plan that helped shape your journey. A great example of this can be found in the story of Albert Einstein and his encounter with Max Planck. Their first meeting was pivotal to Einstein's development of his groundbreaking theories of relativity. Planck, already a prominent physicist, was initially skeptical of Einstein's ideas. But their conversations led to a profound exchange of ideas that helped shape the course of modern physics. The two men's paths crossing was not an accident. Their meeting was a convergence of ideas, experiences, and timing that contributed to one of the most revolutionary shifts in scientific thinking. In fact, many of the greatest minds in history have met by what seems like pure chance. Yet their interactions and collaborations played crucial roles in their success. Whether it's the chance meeting of intellectual giants like Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, or the more personal encounters that transform our lives in ways we don't immediately grasp, we can see the truth of Zen's teaching. That people are not randomly placed in our lives. Their arrival, no matter how brief, has a lasting impact on our spiritual and personal development. Personal insight. I've witnessed this teaching unfold in my own life. A few years ago, I met someone during a casual trip to a quiet cafe. I had no idea that a simple conversation over a cup of tea would become a turning point for me. At the time, I thought we were just passing the time. But looking back, I realized that our interaction was life-changing. This person shared something simple, yet powerful. How to stay present in the moment. How to truly listen without judgment. And most importantly, how to release the need to control everything. That conversation seemed like an ordinary event, but it left an imprint on me. It planted a seed in my heart. And over time, that seed has grown into a deeper understanding of mindfulness and presence. At the time, I didn't know that meeting would alter my perspective on life. But in hindsight, it is clear that this person was meant to cross my path. Their wisdom, though shared in passing, has influenced my daily practices and has shaped my approach to life in profound ways. This story serves as a reminder that sometimes the most significant lessons come from the most unexpected places. When we trust in the flow of life, we realize that even the smallest encounters, the briefest relationships, are a part of our greater spiritual journey. We may not always understand the purpose at the moment, but if we are open to it, the lessons we learn will reveal themselves over time. Just as the wind carries the birds to their destination, without them ever needing to understand the path it takes. In Zen, nothing is truly random. Every person we meet, every encounter we have, is an opportunity for growth. They may not always be easy or pleasant, but they are necessary. They help us evolve, shift perspectives, and become more aware of the interconnectedness of all things. Just as the birds trust the wind to guide them, we too must trust in the unseen forces that shape our paths. guiding us toward the people and experiences we need to become who we are meant to be. We must learn to look at our relationships, both fleeting and lasting, with a sense of gratitude. Each person is a teacher in their own way, showing us more about ourselves and the world around us. The next time you meet someone, take a moment to reflect on the possibility that their presence in your life is no accident. It may be a brief encounter, or it may become a lifelong relationship. But either way, they are playing a part in your journey, just as you are playing a part in theirs. Section 2: Life as a Garden. In Zen, life is often compared to a garden, an ever-growing, ever-changing landscape where every encounter, every person who crosses our path, is a seed planted in the soil of our existence. Some seeds take root quickly, blooming into vibrant flowers that fill our lives with beauty, joy, and color. But, like flowers, their time in our lives is often brief, their petals falling away when their purpose has been fulfilled. Other seeds grow more slowly, like trees with deep roots that endure through the seasons, providing shade and support when we need it most. Every person, every relationship, whether short-lived or long-lasting, contributes to the ecosystem of our spiritual garden. This idea is beautifully articulated in the teachings of Hataka, who likens life to a garden filled with a variety of plants, each one representing a different type of relationship. He explains that some people are like flowers, they come into our lives, shine brightly, and then fade away, leaving behind their beauty and wisdom. Others are like trees, standing the test of time, offering us shelter and strength through life's storms. And still others are like weeds, challenging, uncomfortable, but necessary for our growth, as they force us to examine our attachments, judgments, and preconceived notions. Consider the lives of historical figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. Though they both lived in the same era and worked on similar projects, their paths only briefly intersected. Leonardo, with his visionary genius, and Michelangelo, with his unrivaled skill, were two flowers in the garden of the Renaissance, each contributing to the flowering of art and science in their own way. They had very different temperaments and philosophies, yet their brief interactions shaped the course of art history. While their connection may have been brief, their influence on each other, whether in a single conversation or shared experience, was profound. Each left a lasting mark on the other's creative garden. In the world of Zen, the practice of mindful observation invites us to see the people in our lives not just as fleeting presences, but as integral parts of the natural order of things. Every person we encounter is like a seed planted in the soil of our existence, and they come with a unique lesson. Just as different plants contribute to the diversity of a garden, take a moment to think about the people who have come and gone in your own life. Some of them, like bright flowers, may have been with you for only a short time, but their impact was undeniable. Perhaps they were a mentor who offered wisdom that guided you in a difficult time, or a friend who showed you kindness when you needed it most. These people may have only been in your life for a brief moment, but their influence stays with you like the fragrance of a flower that lingers long after it's gone. Then there are the people who have become the sturdy trees in your life, those whose presence is constant, who provide you with stability, wisdom, and support over time. A great example of this in history is the relationship between Mahatma Gandhi and his followers. Gandhi was like a tree. His principles of nonviolence and truth provided a framework for millions of people. His presence in their lives was like a deeply rooted oak tree, standing firm in the face of adversity, offering shelter and strength. Many of Gandhi's followers were like the flowers, fleeting in their proximity to him, but shaped by his teachings in profound ways. Together, they formed a network of interconnected individuals, each contributing to a larger vision of social change and justice. Then there are the weeds, the people who challenge us, frustrate us, or even hurt us. Zen teaches that these weeds are just as important as the flowers and trees in our garden. In fact, they often contribute to our growth the most. Like weeds that force the gardener to examine the soil, challenge old patterns, and make adjustments. These difficult people push us to confront our inner limitations, release attachments, and practice forgiveness. Think of the relationship between the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche and his contemporary, Richard Wagner. Their friendship began with mutual respect but ultimately became a bitter rivalry. Nietzsche, who once admired Wagner's music and philosophy, came to reject Wagner's ideas, especially as Wagner's later works took on a more nationalistic and religious tone. This discord, though painful, forced Nietzsche to develop his own unique philosophical voice, separate from Wagner's influence. The conflict between them was like a weed in Nietzsche's garden, a challenging presence that ultimately led to new growth and understanding. In our personal lives, we too encounter such weeds. These are the relationships that seem to create tension, discomfort, and frustration. Perhaps it's a coworker who constantly undermines you, a family member who refuses to change, or even a friend whose actions leave you feeling betrayed. While these experiences may be painful, Zen teaches us that they, too, are part of the garden. They force us to confront our attachments, judgments, and expectations. If we can approach these relationships with mindfulness and compassion, they can become opportunities for profound growth and transformation. Personal insight. I've had my share of relationships that seemed like weeds in my life, and one stands out in particular. Several years ago, I was in a working relationship with someone who challenged me at every turn. They were critical, uncooperative, and their behavior left me feeling frustrated and angry. I spent a lot of time blaming them for the tension I felt and wishing that they would change. But after a period of reflection and meditation, I began to see things differently. Instead of focusing on their behavior, I turned inward and examined my own reactions. What I realized was that this person was pushing me to develop patience and resilience, qualities that I hadn't fully embraced before. The weed of this difficult relationship was teaching me to let go of my need to control situations and people. It was forcing me to practice compassion, even when it was difficult. I began to understand that, like weeds in a garden, these difficult moments were opportunities to cultivate the soil of my own heart, making it richer, deeper, and more open. By shifting my perspective, I stopped seeing this person as a nuisance and started to view them as an essential part of my growth. Just like a weed that when uprooted, leaves behind more fertile soil for future plants. This relationship left me with the tools I needed to grow, tools like patience, forgiveness, and self-awareness. Historical example. Another historical example can be found in the life of the famous poet Rainer Maria Rilke. Rilke's early life was filled with turmoil, and his relationships were often fraught with tension. His relationship with his mother, for instance, was strained and difficult. Yet it was through this challenge that he began to develop the inner depth that would later fuel his poetry. His mother, though not the nurturing figure he might have wished for, played a key role in shaping Rilke's introspective, often solitary nature. Like a weed in the garden of his life, this difficult relationship forced him to turn inward. And it was from this soil that his most profound works grew. Conclusion. As we examine the garden of our lives, we see that all the people we encounter, whether they are brief like flowers, enduring like trees, or challenging like weeds, play an important role. They are not random, they are all part of a divine design. In Zen, every relationship, every encounter, is an opportunity for growth. Some may bring joy and beauty. Others may bring discomfort and difficulty. But all are necessary for our evolution. If we approach life with the mindset of a gardener, nurturing, tending, and observing, we can see that everyone who enters our life is there to help us grow. This perspective helps us to appreciate each person we meet, recognizing them as a seed planted in our garden, bringing their own unique energy, wisdom, and lessons. Whether they stay for a season or a lifetime, they are all part of the process of spiritual growth. So the next time you encounter someone, whether they bring joy or challenge, remember that they are contributing to the beautiful garden that is your life. Section 3. The Impermanence of Relationships. In Zen, one of the core teachings is the impermanence of all things. And this extends to the people we meet along our journey. Nothing in life, no matter how solid or enduring it may seem, lasts forever. People come into our lives, and they also leave, often when we least expect it. This impermanence can be painful, especially when we lose someone who has had a profound impact on us. But Zen teaches us that this transient nature is not something to fear. Rather, it is an essential part of life's flow, pushing us toward a deeper understanding of attachment, loss, and the preciousness of the present moment. The impermanence of relationships is something that can be difficult to accept, particularly in a culture that values stability, security, and permanence. We form bonds with people, and over time, we come to rely on their presence in our lives. Yet, Zen reminds us that all things, relationships included, are in a constant state of flux. People may change, grow apart, or even disappear from our lives entirely. This can be especially challenging when we experience the loss of someone we thought would always be there. Whether through death, separation, or simply drifting apart. Consider the life of Vincent van Gogh, one of the most celebrated artists in history. Van Gogh's relationships were marked by both deep love and intense loneliness. His relationship with his brother, Theo, was perhaps the most enduring in his life. And it was one of the few relationships that brought him a sense of stability and support. Theo, who was both a confidant and a financial supporter, was a lifeline for Vincent. Yet, despite their close bond, Van Gogh's mental health struggles and the intensity of his emotions often led to tension between them. Eventually, after Vincent's death, Theo also passed away, leaving behind a profound sense of loss. Their bond, which had been so vital for Vincent, was impermanent. Despite the pain of their loss, we can see how Van Gogh's relationships, however brief or tumultuous, were essential to his creative and emotional growth. His bond with Theo, though brief in comparison to his own lifetime, shaped much of his artistic vision and provided him with the support he needed during some of his darkest moments. Even though Van Gogh's relationships were impermanent, they helped bring his creative genius into the world. And their transient nature only adds to the richness of his story. In Zen practice, we are encouraged to accept impermanence, not as a cause for despair, but as an invitation to appreciate the present moment. If we can let go of the expectation that people, like things, will last forever, we can begin to cultivate a deeper appreciation for the time we have with them. Each relationship, each encounter, is like a fleeting flower that blooms in our lives, filling us with beauty and meaning for a short time before it fades. The lesson is not to cling to the flower, but to savor its presence while it lasts. Personal insight. I've had my share of relationships that were deeply meaningful but also impermanent. One that stands out was a close friendship I had during my college years. We were inseparable at the time, spending late nights talking about everything from philosophy to personal dreams. But as we graduated and entered different stages of our lives, we slowly drifted apart. There was no dramatic falling out, just a gentle fading of our connection as our lives took different paths. At first, I felt a deep sense of loss. I wondered if I had done something wrong or if the friendship had somehow failed. But over time, I came to understand that our friendship had served its purpose. It had shaped who I was during that time in my life, and it had brought me valuable lessons. It was like a season in my life, intense, meaningful, but ultimately fleeting. Instead of focusing on the sadness of the loss, I began to reflect on the beauty of what we had shared. I realized that, in the grand scheme of life, nothing is meant to last forever. Our paths had diverged, but that did not diminish the significance of our time together. Like the flowers in a garden, our friendship had bloomed for a season, and then it passed, leaving behind the seeds of wisdom that would continue to grow in me. Historical example. Another example of the impermanence of relationships can be found in the lives of the famous writers F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway. Though both men were at the peak of their literary careers during the 1920s, their relationship was short-lived and fraught with tension. Fitzgerald, struggling with personal demons and alcoholism, was deeply envious of Hemingway's success. Hemingway, on the other hand, saw Fitzgerald as a symbol of a past literary generation that he was trying to move beyond. Despite their shared experiences in Paris and their mutual respect for each other's work, their friendship did not survive the pressures of ego, rivalry, and differing worldviews. While their relationship was impermanent, It had a lasting impact on both writers. Fitzgerald's struggles informed much of his work. And Hemingway's sharp criticism of Fitzgerald's work helped shape his own writing style. Their connection, brief and turbulent as it was, left an indelible mark on both of their literary careers. And their paths, though divergent, continue to intersect in the pages of history. This story serves as a reminder that not all relationships are meant to last. But even brief and impermanent connections can have a profound influence on who we become. The lesson here is that impermanence is not something to fear, but to embrace. If we accept the fleeting nature of our relationships, we can learn to appreciate them for what they are, rather than mourning their eventual end. Zen reflection. In Zen, we are taught to embrace impermanence, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. Impermanence reminds us that everything is constantly changing, and that every moment is precious. In the same way that we cannot hold on to the bloom of a flower forever, we cannot hold on to the people in our lives forever. What we can do, however, is appreciate the time we have with them, savoring each moment of connection as it comes. If we approach our relationships with mindfulness, we can let go of the need to control their duration, and instead focus on the beauty of the present moment. Personal insight. There was a time when I tried to hold on to a relationship that had already run its course. I kept hoping that the bond would somehow return to what it once was. But the more I clung to it, the more it slipped away. Eventually, I realized that the more I held on, the more I was preventing the natural flow of change from occurring. When I let go, I was able to appreciate the relationship for what it had been, rather than grieving what it had lost. It was a painful but necessary lesson in the impermanence of life. Conclusion. As we navigate our relationships, it is important to remember that impermanence is not a curse, but a blessing. It reminds us to cherish the people we meet, knowing that our time together is limited. Like the flowers in a garden, people bloom in our lives for a time, and then they fade. But each bloom leaves behind something valuable: wisdom, love, or a lesson learned. We don't need to hold on to the flowers forever, we only need to appreciate them while they last. In Zen, the impermanence of relationships teaches us to live more fully in the present, to let go of attachment, and to appreciate the fleeting beauty of every moment. By embracing the impermanence of life, we open ourselves to the richness of the present, knowing that every relationship, no matter how brief, has something to teach us. And in that way, even the impermanent nature of life becomes a source of peace and spiritual growth. Section 4. The role of difficult people in our spiritual growth. In Zen, the idea of difficult people is not something to shy away from. In fact, Zen teachings often emphasize that difficult people, those who challenge us, push our buttons, or make us uncomfortable, are not obstacles to our growth but rather catalysts for spiritual development. These people, like thorns in a rose bush, may seem painful or irritating at first, but they have a unique role in shaping our character and helping us develop qualities we might not otherwise cultivate, such as patience, compassion, and resilience. When we encounter someone difficult, it's natural to want to avoid them or wish they would change. We may get frustrated, angry, or upset, and we may feel justified in holding on to negative emotions. But Zen teaches us that every person we meet, including the difficult ones, is a mirror reflecting something within ourselves. Instead of seeing them as a problem, we are invited to see them as a reflection of our own unresolved issues or tendencies. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, once said, "When we are in touch with our anger, we begin to see that it is not the person who has made us angry, but the way we are responding to the situation." This insight helps us understand that difficult people are not the source of our suffering. Our own reactions to them are what cause our pain. When we realize this, we can begin to approach difficult people with mindfulness, seeing them not as enemies, but as teachers in disguise. Historical example. Take the life of Abraham Lincoln, one of the most revered figures in American history. Lincoln's relationship with his political rivals, particularly with people like Stephen A. Douglas, was fraught with tension and deep ideological differences. Douglas was a staunch defender of slavery, while Lincoln believed in the abolition of slavery and the preservation of the Union. Their debates were intense, and at times, they seemed irreconcilable. Yet, despite the personal and political animosity between them, Lincoln's encounters with Douglas helped shape his views and sharpen his leadership abilities. Lincoln's ability to engage with his political opponents, even when their views were in direct conflict with his own, helped him grow as a leader and as a person. Instead of dismissing Douglas or allowing his anger to fester, Lincoln approached the situation with humility, respect, and understanding. This willingness to engage with difficult people, even when they were deeply challenging, allowed him to mature into one of the greatest leaders in history. In Zen, we are encouraged to see difficult people in a similar light, not as sources of frustration, but as mirrors reflecting the areas of our character that require attention and development. These people present an opportunity for us to practice patience, compassion, and forgiveness. Just as a diamond is polished by friction, our inner qualities are often polished through the friction of difficult relationships. Personal insight. I have experienced firsthand the challenge of dealing with difficult people. There was a period in my life when I worked closely with someone who was consistently critical and dismissive of my ideas. At first, I was hurt by their behavior and struggled with feelings of frustration and resentment. I spent a lot of time thinking about how unfair the situation was, wishing that this person would change their attitude toward me. But after some reflection, I realized that this relationship was teaching me something important about myself. Instead of focusing on how the other person needed to change, I began to look inward and examine my own reactions. What was it about their behavior that triggered such strong emotions in me? What did it reveal about my own insecurities or desire for approval? Through this process of self-reflection, I was able to let go of my attachment to their approval and learn to stand more confidently in my own truth. This experience was transformative. I came to realize that the difficult person in my life was, in fact, a teacher, helping me develop emotional resilience, self-awareness, and the ability to let go of unnecessary attachments. Like the Zen principle of accepting what is, I learned to accept this person for who they were, without trying to change them. By doing so, I found peace within myself. Historical example. A striking example of how difficult people can play a role in our spiritual growth is found in the life of the Buddha himself. One of the most famous stories in Buddhist tradition is about the Buddha's encounter with a man named Kunda, who offered him a meal of contaminated food. This meal led to the Buddha becoming gravely ill, and he died shortly thereafter. In many spiritual traditions, a story like this might be seen as a betrayal. Kunda, in offering the Buddha the tainted food, could be seen as a villain. However, in Zen and in Buddhist teachings, we recognize that Kunda's actions were not something to be resented, but rather something to be embraced as part of the Buddha's journey. The Buddha, with his deep understanding of impermanence, did not react with anger or frustration toward Kunda. Instead, he accepted the situation as a natural part of life. In fact, he used it as an opportunity to teach his disciples about the nature of life and death, emphasizing the importance of mindfulness and acceptance in the face of suffering. Kunda's action, though seemingly negative, played a crucial role in helping the Buddha complete his journey and impart his teachings to the world. This story serves as a profound reminder that difficult people and challenging circumstances are not always enemies. In many cases, they are opportunities for us to deepen our spiritual understanding, cultivate compassion, and practice acceptance. The presence of difficult people in our lives is not a sign that something is wrong, but rather an invitation to grow. Zen reflection. In Zen practice, we are taught to approach difficult people with mindfulness and awareness. Instead of reacting impulsively, we are encouraged to take a moment to observe our feelings and reactions. By doing so, we can gain insight into our own minds and the areas of ourselves that require healing or growth. The more we cultivate this awareness, the more we can approach difficult people with compassion, rather than frustration or anger. It's important to remember that everyone we meet, including those who challenge us, is a part of our spiritual journey. Difficult people are not sent into our lives to harm us, they are sent to help us develop the qualities that we may be lacking. Patience, compassion, humility, and self-awareness. When we can see difficult people in this light, we can approach them with gratitude, understanding that they are playing an important role in our personal and spiritual development. Personal insight. I once had a colleague who was particularly challenging to work with. She often undermined my ideas and made it difficult to collaborate. I found myself becoming frustrated and resentful. But eventually, I realized that my frustration was not with her, but with my own expectations and attachments. I had expected her to behave a certain way, and when she didn't, I reacted negatively. When I took a step back and practiced mindfulness, I began to see that her behavior was teaching me to let go of my need to control others. She was showing me that I didn't need external validation to be confident in my ideas and actions. By accepting her as she was, without trying to change her, I learned to trust myself more deeply and let go of my attachment to how others saw me. Conclusion. Difficult people are an inevitable part of life, but they do not exist to thwart our progress. Instead, they serve as mirrors, reflecting the areas of our character that need attention and growth. In Zen, we learn to approach difficult people with mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance. recognizing that they are essential teachers on our path to spiritual development. Through these challenging relationships, we are invited to cultivate patience, resilience, and self-awareness, qualities that are necessary for our growth as individuals and as spiritual beings. So, the next time you encounter someone who challenges you, remember that they may be the teacher you need to help you grow. As we've seen today, the people who come into our lives are not random. They are part of a greater design, each one offering a lesson, a challenge, or a moment of growth. Whether they stay for a lifetime or just a season, they shape us in ways we might not even fully understand. The Zen wisdom teaches us that by embracing these connections, no matter how difficult or brief, we are given the opportunity to deepen our own self-awareness and spiritual growth. So, I encourage you to reflect. Who are the people in your life right now? And what lessons are they teaching you? Perhaps the next time you feel frustrated or challenged by someone, you can pause and ask yourself, what is this person here to teach me? If you've enjoyed this journey of reflection, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more spiritual insights. And leave a comment below sharing your experiences. Remember, every person we meet is a mirror reflecting parts of ourselves that are ready to grow. Thank you for watching. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, may your path be filled with wisdom, compassion, and peace.